The first thing I did after being reborn and returning to my senior year of high school was to sever ties with my biological parents. Everyone laughed at me for being foolish. After all, my biological father is a billionaire. But I chose to give up my status as a rich young master and resolutely return to my adoptive parents' impoverished home. In my past life, I was so stupid. After being taken back by my biological parents, I hadn't even settled in before I was utterly ruined by that fake young master, Boda, or rather, the illegitimate son of my biological father and his white moonlight. During that kidnapping, he and his scumbag father conspired to set a trap. The whole family surrounded the fake younger brother to comfort him, leaving me, who was bleeding profusely, at the scene and dragging me to my death. This time, I'm not so naive. Having been given a second chance, I've long since lost all illusions about those blind and heartless relatives. I beat up Boda in front of my own father and went straight back to my adoptive parents who truly cared for me. With my photographic memory and 15 years of foresight, I'm just waiting to see their family fall from the heights into the mire. That day, I had just returned to the villa, and before I even stepped inside, my eldest sister, Ji Qingyin, started yelling at me. Ji Pingyin, so you finally know to come back? Do you even know what time it is? Immediately afterward, the third sister, Ji Zhijia, said with a look of disgust, I came back early this morning, and you didn't even make a phone call, making the whole family wait for you to eat alone. You're really something. When I looked up, I saw my eldest sister, Ji Qingyin, second sister, Ji Jinglei, and third sister, Ji Zhijia, standing in the doorway, staring at me. Behind them stood Ji Boda, who was half a head taller than them, his eyes indifferent as if nothing was wrong. I stood there, coldly surveying them. I didn't make you wait for me. My phone died a long time ago, so I couldn't contact you. Do you have to be so aggressive right from the start? The moment the words left my mouth, all four faces showed expressions of surprise almost simultaneously. Ji Zhijia yelled at me in a shrill voice. How dare you talk to us like that? I walked over step by step, my tone colder. We're all children of parents. Why can't I talk to you like this? Do you think you're so superior? Or do you think I'm inferior to you? As I spoke, my gaze fell on Jibber's face. He was clearly taken aback for a moment, but quickly put on a calm expression as if it were none of his business. But I knew in my heart that this guy was a smiling viper and that I had died at his hands in my past life. On the day of the kidnapping, while I was about to bleed to death, he pretended to faint and tricked the whole family into circling around him, forcing me to bleed to death. Thinking of this, my anger flared up instantly, and I couldn't be bothered to pretend to be docile anymore. I strode up the steps, only half a step away from Jibber. Didn't you say you wanted to eat? If you're not hungry, don't bring up food. If you don't like me, just say so. Stop being so sarcastic. You don't find it disgusting, but I've been wanting to throw up for a while now. Ji Qingyin's eyebrows shot up immediately. You're really being unreasonable. We, as your older sisters, are just saying a few words to you, and you talk back like this? Ji Zhijia charged forward, pointing her finger at my nose and yelling, Yes, I just don't like you, so what? Even if we have the same mother. Humph, I just don't like you, I just can't stand the sight of you. What can you do about it? Hearing this, your backpack slipped from your shoulder to your hand, a slight smile playing on your lips, and you said, You're all my own sisters. What can I do? But there's still one thing I can do. Before you finished speaking, I suddenly raised my foot and kicked Ji Boda hard in the crotch. There were no screams, no cries. Only a strange, muffled sound came from his throat before he collapsed to the ground, clutching his groin and writhing in pain. The three G sisters screamed in terror at the sight. Ji Pingyin yelled at me. Are you crazy? Why are you hitting people? I coldly replied to her. Is it okay if I hit you? Mom and Dad, I've been hit. Come out here right now. Ji Zhijia was closest to Ji Boda, but she didn't dare go up to check on his injury, as the location was too embarrassing. After kicking him, I felt half relieved and then casually swung my school bag and smashed it over his head again. Besides the test papers and study materials, the heaviest item in the school bag was a thick Chinese-English wise main dictionary, at least 8 centimeters thick and weighing almost as much as a brick. The school bag slammed into his cheek 2 or 3 times, and only then did Jibber let out a scream. Ji Qingyin snapped out of his daze and rushed over to push me, but I was unwilling to give up. I kicked him across the face and gritted my teeth, cursing, You dare to slander me at home? You'll kill me. The kick hurt me so much that I almost couldn't stand up. Then, Ji Jinglei and Ji Qingyin pushed me to the ground, and Ji Boda completely lost consciousness. A moment later, the door was flung open, and Ji Junhong and Zhao Wei rushed in with several servants. Zhao Wei screamed first, then cried and threw herself at Ji Boda's side. Li Junhong glared at his unconscious son, his eyes instantly bloodshot, his chest heaving, as if he were about to explode, and roared, "You bastard! How dare you!" He raised his hand to slap me, but I staggered back a step and pointed at Ji Boda on the ground, coldly saying, "Dad, aren't you going to go see him?" Zhao Wei, disregarding her image, knelt beside Ji Boda, crying and shouting, "Boda, what's wrong? Don't scare Mommy." Ji Junhong, his chest heaving with anger, glanced at the mother and son, then turned to his three still-stunned daughters and yelled, "Call 120 immediately." Ji Qingyan and Ji Jinglei rushed towards the door almost simultaneously. Then he suddenly turned around and glared at me, demanding, "Did you want to kill your brother? Tell me, why did you hit him?" Zhao Wei also stopped crying and looked at me with tears in her eyes. Looking at her face, my heart sank. Her eyes weren't looking at her long-lost son, but at a stranger, even with disgust and fear, as if she had never known me before. Seeing her like this, I regretted hitting Ji Boda even less. Why did I hit him? Of course, it was because he deserved it. I took 2 steps back and continued, "How dare that bastard give his own son such attitude? Who does he think he is? I am the real member of the Ji family. He's inferior to me in both background and academic performance. So why should I have to cater to his whims?" I spoke without backing down, even with a hint of sneer, and the slanderous words slipped out. I never said at school that I was the biological son of the Ji family, nor did I reveal any information about our family. If I hadn't been delayed by something in class that day, and if I hadn't been afraid that taking action would expose my identity, I would have beaten him up long ago. Why would I have waited until now? He declared himself the heir of the Ji family in front of so many people. Wasn't that a blatant slap in the face to the Ji family? If everyone at school found out, how would I ever face anyone again? You all always told me to give in to him, and I tolerated him for 4 whole years. Even when I fell and my leg hurt so much I couldn't walk, he still dared to give me a hard time. I've really had enough. Before I could finish speaking, Ji Junhong roared, "Shut up! Shut up!" His voice was so loud that Ji Jia, who was standing next to him, trembled. He then yelled at the servants at the door, "Go back." He then glared at me fiercely and threatened, "You better pray that your brother is all right, or you can get out of the Ji family and go back to your adoptive parents' house to live your lowly life." I sneered, "Dad, I'm a member of the Ji family. He's just a bastard. How could he be more important than me?" I deliberately stabbed him in the back. His face darkened, and he gritted his teeth, saying, "Since I brought him back and raised him, and he's been with your mother for 18 years, there's no difference between a bastard and a biological child in my eyes. Tell me, since you came back, haven't I treated you two the same materially?" I scoffed. "Yeah, even though we both go to #1 high school, they don't provide drivers. But I know that before I came back, he had a full-time driver who picked him up and dropped him off. He got at least 30,000 yuan in pocket money every week and could use my mom's supplementary credit card to swipe his card as he pleased. He told me this himself. You probably didn't know, did you?" He growled. "That doesn't mean I'm being unfair to you." I raised my hand to interrupt. "I am the one with the blood of the Ji family. Your so-called fair treatment of me and him is the greatest insult to me. When I return to the Ji family, I'm not just facing you alone, but the whole family, including my mother and several sisters. What does your fairness mean? Even if I can understand that he's been a substitute all these years, filling the void when I'm gone, it doesn't mean I want him to stay here. Today I'm going to make him understand that he and I are not on the same level at all. I am the legitimate son of the Ji family, and he's not even a bastard. He's just an illegitimate child." My words struck Ji Junhong squarely. Ji Boda, this boy who knew he was an illegitimate child, was only a teenager, but under the tutelage of Ji Junhong and Zhao Wei, he was extremely shrewd. In front of Zhao Wei, he was obedient and well-behaved, like a sensible son. He is extremely self-disciplined when facing Ji Junhong, like a potential successor, but when facing his older sisters, he is a lively younger brother who knows how to be affectionate. I can't forget the video of the kidnappers cutting off my right thumb. Back then, they were threatening the Ji family and Zhao Wei. To save face, the Ji family sent a ransom of 2 million yuan, but they immediately raised the price. As a result, I was stabbed, my carotid artery was severed, and blood gushed out like I was going to die. But the Ji family only pleaded with the kidnappers not to harm Ji Boda, ignoring me completely. Later, I died, my soul floating in midair. I watched as Ji Boda, who had fainted from fright, was taken to the intensive care unit, while my cold body was pushed into the hospital morgue. It wasn't until the hospital urged that I be cremated that the G family seemed to suddenly remember that I even existed. My soul wandered around the G family in Yunqing for more than a year before I slowly saw the truth. It was all orchestrated by G Boda himself. I saw him call the kidnapper who had been on the run for a year and pay the remaining balance, all in order to completely seize the inheritance rights of the G family. So he plotted to kill me, the only person who could compete with him. I lived with Gibbon for over a decade. If I hadn't fallen at school that afternoon, accidentally awakening my memories of my past life, or rather, being reborn, I might have continued to endure it foolishly, just like in my previous life, until he killed me. I clearly remember that after G Boda came to power, he brought his birth mother, Qin Balian, into the G family, and Zhao Wei and her 4 older sisters all met extremely tragic ends. Through a series of exchanges, the scumbag father, Ji Junhong, easily gained the forgiveness of Zhao Wei's family. As soon as Zhao Wei died, he immediately held a wedding with Qin Balian, and Ji Boda naturally became the heir of the Ji family in Yunqing. Having lived through 2 lifetimes, I've become numb to the tears and performances of the women in my family. Just then, Ji Qingyin and Ji Jinglei came out of the room, trying to help the unconscious Ji Boda, and Ji Zhidia also rushed over to help. Ji Qingyin coldly snapped at me. Ji Pingyin, you've disappointed us greatly. Ji Zhidia added insult to injury in a shrill voice, saying that I was a selfish ingrate, and that it was fortunate that she never treated me as family. Otherwise, she would have been disgusted to death by me long ago. Zhao Wei was sobbing uncontrollably. Seeing that her 3 daughters couldn't lift Ji Boda, she turned around and tearfully accused Ping, and, "You're so heartless." Hearing this, I felt both ridiculous and furious. If I hadn't been reborn, I probably would have continued to endure until I died. I glanced around at Ji Junhong and these indifferent faces, feeling only disdain and disgust. I said coldly, "You all think Ji Boda is my brother? You really think he's a member of the Ji family? Am I your biological son? For years ago, you did a paternity test. So what about him? Was he adopted? You keep talking about your son and your brother, but what about me? In the past 4 years, not a single person has called me brother, let alone son." This string of words stunned them all. They had never seen me yell like that before, let alone seen me point at Ji Boda in public and question him, much less hit him. It wasn't until the wailing of an ambulance came from outside that Zhao Wei hurriedly told the maid to open the door. Amidst flashing red and blue lights, 2 medical staff in white coats rushed in with a stretcher, lifted Ji Boda into the car, and drove off. Zhao Wei immediately followed, not even glancing at me. Ji Zhijie followed closely behind, calling out, "Mom, I'm going too." Ji Qingyin quickly pulled her back, saying, "Mom, don't go. My 3rd sister and I will go." Jing Lei helped her mother back to rest. Zhao Wei covered her mouth and sobbed silently. As she stepped onto the stairs, she glared at me fiercely. The ambulance sped away, and soon only the 4 of us were left at the door. I met Ji Junhong's sinister and ferocious gaze and suddenly smiled. "I'm your real son, aren't I?" As soon as I finished speaking, Ji Junhong, Zhao Wei, and Ji Jinglei all fell silent, staring intently at me. I pointed towards the gate and pressed him further. "Tell me, is he your biological son?" Ji Junhong's face was ashen. My eye twitched involuntarily a few times. When I heard Zhao Wei say, "Does it really matter if they're biologically related?" I couldn't help but sneer inwardly. Boda has been with us for 18 years, and she talks about how precious this family bond is, but I can tell she's forcing me to make a decision. I stared at Ji Junhong, my eyes unblinking, and asked, "Dad, what do you think? Is it really that important whether someone is your biological child?" His face was gloomy, and his gaze seemed to want to pin me to the spot. Today, my attitude was completely different from my usual respectful manner, which made him very uncomfortable. My repeated use of the word biological child only made him more embarrassed. He took a deep breath, as if finally laying his cards on the table. "Bringing you back home was a mistake. Since you came, this family has been in constant turmoil. You've been so cruel to your brother. The G family can't tolerate you anymore. Go back to your adoptive parents. When we brought you back, your household registration wasn't transferred. You only have the surname G, and G family blood flows in your veins, but you're not a member of the G family. You don't deserve it." Zhao Wei opened her mouth as if to say something, but Ji Jinglei gently tugged at her arm, and she shut up. I kept staring at Ji Junhong's face, and I could tell that this time he wasn't just bluffing. He really wanted to get rid of me. The goal was clear, to make G Boda the sole heir of the G family. That saved a lot of trouble. So I simply said, Mr. G, are you sure you want to sever ties with me? From now on, I'm no longer a member of the G family. His face was ashen, and he didn't say a word. I grinned. At least I finally beat up that bastard G Boda, and I could finally vent the anger I've been holding in for 4 years. I bent down, picked up my school bag, turned around, and walked out of the yard, saying as I walked, Remember, Mr. G, Ms. Zhao, and Miss G, from now on, I am no longer a member of your family. The 3 people on the porch watched me walk down the steps, across the yard, and open the gate. Zhao Wei finally couldn't hold back anymore and cried her heart out. Ping'an, please don't go, Mom begs you. I looked back at her. Her makeup was ruined by snot and tears, and I still felt a sharp pain in my heart. But I coldly said to Ji Junhong, once I step out of this door, I hope we never see each other again. I will never look for you again, or I will die a horrible death, and you should never come looking for me either. Since you shouldn't have found me, then pretend you never found me, or that I died 18 years ago. Mr. G, just pretend I was never born. I turned to Zhao Wei and said, Ms. Zhao, let me give you some advice. The man I hid is your adopted son, but he is only your adopted son. I emphasized my words, then shook off her hand and tossed the keys to the side of the road. Leaving one's biological parents isn't necessarily a bad thing. After all, what biological mother would value her adopted son more than her own? Considering she's my biological mother, I've already given her a hint. Whether she understands or not is none of my concern. From then on, the sea was wide enough for fish to leap and the sky high enough for birds to fly. The air on the summer night was hot and humid, and the salty smell of the sea breeze had faded a little. I walked alone on the street with my school bag on my back, and a strange excitement welled up in my heart. My heart was beating so fast that it felt like it was going to burst out of my chest. I calculated all my savings over the years, including New Year's money, red envelopes, birthday gifts, and a more than 10,000 yuan in the Green Bubble app. It added up to nearly 200,000 yuan, which is a huge sum for me. I would never be foolish enough to return the money. Compared to Gibbon, I am still very poor. He receives tens of thousands of dollars in pocket money from his eldest and second eldest sisters every month, and who knows, that illegitimate child might even have a supplementary credit card. However, I'm not bad either. After all, for more than 10 years after my death in my previous life, I stay by Jibber's side and learn a lot of inside information about the financial world and even some secrets about the signs of wealthy families in the South. These things are all valuable and will not be wasted. I got into a taxi and headed straight for the place where I had lived for 14 years, my adoptive parents' home. Xingye community is a small, old community where most of the residents have lived for over 10 or 20 years, and the neighbors have a strong sense of community. However, the lack of an elevator in the building is a bit inconvenient. Chen Xiaohua, the adoptive father, and Lu Qing, the adoptive mother, ran a Jiangnan-style snack shop at the entrance of the residential area. The shop was already closed at this time, but they probably hadn't gone to bed yet. I turned left and right until I reached the entrance of Unit 3 in a building. I climbed to the second floor and knocked on the door of apartment 201. The door opened quickly, and a joyful shout rang out. Brother, what brings you here? Mom and Dad, my brother's back. I stopped the little girl from rushing towards me and looked her up and down with a smile. Wow, Hui has grown so tall in just a few months. I called into the house. Mom and Dad, I'm home. This girl, Chun Shu Wei, is my adoptive parents' biological daughter. They adopted me from an orphanage 3 years ago and had her 3 years later. Now she's over 1.6 meters tall, much taller than the last time I saw her, and has grown into a beautiful young woman. She smiled and said, Brother, I'm 16 years old now, and I'm 1.66 meters tall. I can still grow taller. Hui pulled me into the house where a middle-aged couple, Chen Xiaohua and Lu Qing, came out to greet us, their faces beaming with joy. Ping in his back. Come in and sit down. I nodded with a smile, and Lu Qing rubbed her hands together and greeted me warmly. Come in quickly. Have you eaten? If not, Mom will make you a bowl of noodles. After saying that, she glanced at me a little awkwardly. Annie will make you a bowl of noodles. I immediately interrupted. Mom, you're my mom. I haven't had dinner yet. As soon as I finished speaking, Lu Qing turned and went to the kitchen, gently wiping away her tears when no one was looking. Soon, Chen Xiaohua walked over, glanced at me, nodded, and smiled with satisfaction. Looking at the man before me and Hui beside me, I felt inexplicably calmer. This was the place where I had lived since childhood, the home I had lived in for over a decade. I used to be called Chin Pingin, but 4 years ago, I changed my name to Ji Pingin and went to the Ji family villa. But that place only gave me life and a surname. This place gave me a true family. I suppressed my thoughts, put down my backpack, and looked around the room. The furnishings were no different from 4 years ago, just like the year I left. Qin Xiaohua handed over a cup of tea and asked, "Why did you come here so suddenly? Did you suffer some injustice at the Ji family's house?" I remained silent for a while, unsure of what to say. Seeing my reaction, Chen Xiaohua patted my shoulder and looked at me earnestly. "It's all right. When you were taken back home, I told you that although we are not as wealthy as the Ji family, our door will always be open to you." My dad patted my shoulder and smiled, saying this will always be my home, no matter when I come back. At that moment, I felt a warm current wash over me, and I couldn't help but smile and say I was fine. I'm a senior in high school now, and I'll be taking the college entrance exam soon. I heard my household registration is still here. Chen Xiaohua nodded and said, "Yes, I'm still at home." He suggested I transfer my household registration there, but my biological father disagreed, saying we should wait a few years and see. At this point, he frowned and asked if they didn't like me. I shook my head and said, "It's okay, it's all in the past, and I won't have anything to do with them anymore." His expression immediately changed, and he asked me if it was that adopted boy from the G family who bullied me. Back then, after the G family took me back, he made a special inquiry and learned that they had an adopted son the same age as me, as well as 4 older sisters. Thinking about how arrogant that family was back then still makes me furious. I shook my head again and said that we shouldn't talk about the past. I'm back, and I'll always be your and Mom's son and Huey's older brother. This identity will never change. Only then did his expression soften. He thought to himself that if the child didn't want to hold a grudge, then so be it. But if I really had any resentment, he wouldn't be polite to the Ji family. Do you really think Qin Xiaohua is just a restaurant owner? He raised his son like a treasure for 14 years, and they still don't treat him well after taking him away. What right do they have? If it weren't for his spite back then, their small branch in Yunqing would be nothing. His emotions gradually calmed down, and a smile returned to his face, but I felt a little nervous. In the past 4 years, I had come here very infrequently. If Ji Junhong hadn't specifically told me not to have any contact with the Chun family, I definitely would have been in frequent contact. In those years, I cared too much about the feelings of my biological parents and sisters. Looking back now, I was such a fool. Seeing me in a daze, Qin Xiaohua suddenly patted my shoulder and laughed, scolding me. "You brat, why are you being so polite with me? This will always be your home. You can come anytime as long as there are people here. Your room is always available. Your mother cried for a long time the day you left. That room has never been touched. No matter how you are doing at the Ji family, if you don't want to go back, just stay here." Just then, Lu Qing came out of the kitchen and placed a bowl of stir-fried noodles on the coffee table, urging me to eat quickly, as it was already late and I hadn't eaten yet. I took the chopsticks and said, "Thank you, Mom. These past few years, the food I've missed the most is still your cooking." She turned around with a smile and went to help me tidy up my bedroom. I didn't get up until almost 7 the next morning. After getting ready, I went back to my room, picked up my school bag, walked into the living room, drank the soy milk in 3 gulps, and casually tore a plastic bag and stuffed in 2 fried dough sticks, thinking that I would take them to school to eat since I was running out of time. We walked out of the house together, but as soon as we stepped out of the building, we heard someone calling out from not far away. I told him he must have run here. I turned my head and saw my third sister's Porsche parked there, with the front and rear windows rolled down. Ji Jie was sitting in the driver's seat with an I knew it look on her face, while Zhao Wei in the back seat had red eyes, as if she had just been crying. I whispered to Hui Hui, "You go first, I'll go to school by myself later." She didn't say anything, lowered her head, and walked away quickly. I walked forward to the car and stopped about 2 meters away from them. I stared at Zhao Wei, a chill creeping up my spine. Weren't we supposed to leave each other alone? Why is she doing this now? Is she being ungrateful? Before I could finish speaking, she had already pushed open the car door and gotten out, reaching out to pull me. I instinctively took a few steps back and coldly retorted, "If you have something to say, say it. If not, I have to go to school." Her eyes were red-rimmed, and her voice trembled as if she were trying hard to suppress a sob. She said, "Mom is sorry. Please come home with me." She came from a prominent family and had received higher education, so of course she understood that it was the adult's fault for the child to be lost at such a young age, and what fault could a baby have? She kept saying, "I ignored your feelings and promised to treat me well from now on." As I listened, A half smile played on my lips, and I casually asked, "Is G Boda all right?" She quickly replied that he was fine, adding that my father had just been confused with anger yesterday and promised to treat me better from now on. I shook my head. "Are you done? If you're done, I'm leaving." Before she could react, I'd already turned to leave. At this moment, Gigi suddenly pushed open the car door and rushed out, pointing her finger at my nose and yelling at me. "Ji Pingin, don't go too far. I was beaten up by you, and I'm still being magnanimous and don't need your apology. Now you should come back with us obediently, and you'll still be the young master of the Ji family." I stopped, smiled, and said, "No need for an apology? These are your terms." Zhao Wei quickly nodded and said no, that she was the one who wronged me, not me. Yezvidius nortet coldly. I shook my head. "Then what are my conditions? Are you willing to let G Boda move out?" Zhao Wei froze, as if stumped by my question, opening her mouth but unable to utter a word. Ji Zhidie's face darkened, telling me not to go too far and advising me to stop while I was ahead. They had already come to pick me up. What more did I want? She also said that since I had beaten G Boda so badly, shouldn't I apologize? Zhao Wei looked distressed, took 2 steps forward, and asked me in a trembling voice, "Pingyan, are you really not going home with your mother?" I exhaled and said calmly, "I won't go back. I made it very clear yesterday. If I go back, I'll die a horrible death. Even if I'm not afraid of death, you should at least kick him out of the G family. But now it's obvious you're reluctant to let go. That's your choice. I also made my choice last night. Since I'm not willing to back down and go back to the G family, then please don't bother me anymore, okay?" Ji Zhijia cursed me angrily, asking who I thought I was and who I was trying to impress. She said that G Boda was her brother, and she would never let him leave. She also said that my father was just giving me one last chance. She wouldn't even come to the shabby place where low-class people live. She really thought she was a treasure. Zhao Wei trembled slightly and said, "Pingyan, do you really have to let Boda leave? You're tearing my heart out like this." I glanced at my watch, a slight smile playing on my lips. "Mrs. G," I said, "I understand how you feel. G Boda was a substitute for me during the 14 years I was away, plus the 4 years I was back, making a total of 18 years. You watch him grow up. Your bond must be very deep. But you shouldn't have made me live under the same roof as him, and you can't even treat him fairly. You're all worried he won't be able to accept it. But has any of you cared whether I can accept it? Has any of you cared about how I feel watching my parents and relatives being taken away by someone else? You've been favoring an outsider the whole time." I looked up at them, a surge of anger welling up inside me. I coldly retorted, "You know perfectly well how you treat your own son and brother. Why should I suffer this humiliation in the G family? I'm doing just fine with my adoptive father's family. Aren't you uncomfortable?" I turned and left as soon as I finished speaking. I had to go to school and didn't have time to argue with you. Just like I said last night, I'm no longer a member of the G family. I won't look for you, and please don't bother me anymore. From now on, we have nothing to do with each other." This time, Zhao Wei really couldn't hold back her tears. Before, when she saw me at the G family's house, she always thought I was vulgar and ill-mannered, but she never thought that it should have been her responsibility. She always thought I was just putting on an act when I said I wanted to sever ties. After all, the G family was well off, and she thought I would be as obedient as before, doing my best to fulfill whatever they asked, just to gain their approval. But now, I'm clearly different. I walked quickly, disappearing from their sight in just a few minutes. Zhao Wei watched my retreating figure, her face full of incomprehension. She was simply reluctant to let Ji Boda leave her. Couldn't I understand that feeling? Ji Jinhong once told her that she must be strict with me and train me well so that I could inherit the Ji family business in the future. So over the years, they have hardly given me a kind look and have high and harsh requirements. But they forgot that the attitude and demands they placed on Jibber were completely different from the standards they applied to me. Even though she was heartbroken, she didn't want Jibber to leave because he was the son she had raised from infancy. Although he was a bit clingy, that was a sign of the deep bond between mother and son, and she felt there was nothing wrong with that. But she just couldn't accept me, her own son. Jijia stepped forward to support Zhao Wei, frowning as she advised her, "Mom, don't cry. Let's go back. Boda's 18th birthday is next month, and we haven't even prepared the birthday party and coming-of-age ceremony yet." Zhao Wei didn't say anything after hearing this, got into the car, and they left afterwards. After lunch, I went back to the classroom and sat down at my desk to read. Around 1 o'clock, accompanied by the sound of high heels, a figure stopped in front of me. I looked up from behind my book and saw Ji Jinglei, standing there expressionless. She said calmly, "Come out, I have something to tell you." I felt a surge of annoyance. Didn't we agree not to acknowledge me as a member of the G family? Didn't we say not to bother me? But I glanced at the classroom. The students were either reading or sleeping. I couldn't afford to lose my temper on the spot, so I could only nod and follow her down the school building. She stopped beside a big tree, turned around and stared at me, saying, "I've put all the things you left at home in the car. Do you want them?" I was taken aback. "Is this why you came to see me?" Of the 4 older sisters in the Tang family, Ji Miaoshuan rarely spoke to me, but she never spoke ill of me either. The others, however, almost never gave me a friendly look. Ji Jinglei remained silent, just looking at me. I shook my head and said I wasn't a member of the Ji family anymore, and I didn't need anything from the Ji family. You could just throw it away. She said calmly, "The things are in the car. If you want them, come with me to get them later. I came to see you for something else." "What did you mean by what you said last when you left yesterday?" "You said Boda is Mom's adopted son. What did that mean?" I just shook my head again and didn't answer. I simply said, "It really doesn't mean anything special. I just wanted to let you know that he is Yang Zi," and turned to leave without saying anything more. All I wanted was to end this meeting as soon as possible. Behind me, Ji Jinglei stood still, watching my figure gradually disappear from sight. He was probably wondering, did I really not mean anything by it? Why did I repeat that sentence on purpose? Why am I giving up everything? What am I afraid of? Or do I really want to sever ties with the Ji family? But in that instant, I saw a hint of mockery flash in his eyes, making him even harder to understand. Thinking of this, he still walked towards the school gate, took a suitcase from the gatehouse, and handed it to the security guard to give to Chun Pingyan, a senior in high school. Then he left with a belly full of doubts. When I got home from school, I was stopped by the security guard as soon as I reached the gate. When I saw the 2 suitcases in the security room, my head immediately started to ache. After hesitating for a few seconds, I decided to just throw the things back at the G family's house as a way of showing my attitude and determination. So I took out my phone and called Chan Xiaohua, who then hailed a car and took the suitcase all the way to the entrance of the G family villa. I dropped it off and left. When I got home, I was surprised to find that my adoptive parents were there, and the table was set with a sumptuous dinner. It was clear that no one had touched their food, and they were waiting for me. I pushed open the door and went in. Chun Xiaohua greeted me with a smile. "You came back too late yesterday, so I'm making up for it with a welcome back feast today. There weren't many people in the shop at 2 p.m., so I closed up and came back. Come and try it. Your mom made this especially for you." I washed my hands and sat down. He pulled a bottle of beer from beside his feet and put on the table. "Welcome home safely. Drink less today." Lu Qing smiled and glared at him, but kept putting food on my plate. Chin Xiaohua raised his glass, his tone unusually serious. "Let's not talk about anything else. No matter what your past was like, you will always be our child. Welcome home. And we hope you can forget the past and start anew." Lu Qing also raised her glass, her eyes red, and said, "Pingyan, this is your home, and it always will be." Hearing this, my nose tingled. I nodded emphatically and downed the entire glass of beer in one gulp. On Sunday, I changed into clean new clothes and ran to the lottery shop outside my neighborhood, feeling refreshed. Standing at the door, I stared at the densely drawn calculation lines on the wall by lottery players, thinking to myself, if I remember correctly, the double color ball lottery draw at the end of May would feature a historically rare consecutive number sequence. These numbers can't be generated by a machine, and no one can guess them out of thin air. Although someone did win the grand prize that time. To avoid suspicion, I only spent 10 yuan to buy 5 tickets, asking the shop owner to arrange them in order from 8 to 14 according to my requirements. The shop owner gave me a strange look, but didn't ask any questions. He quickly printed out the ticket and handed it to me before going back to studying his numbers. I put away the ticket and turned to go home, knowing full well that I definitely wouldn't win tomorrow's draw, because the ticket I actually wanted to buy was for the draw next Saturday night. I can't tell anyone about this, not even my parents. I'm just treating it as a small test after my rebirth. If it really works, I'll tell them later. On Sunday evening, Ji Qingyan returned home and was about to take a shower and go to bed. She had just changed in her nightgown when she heard a knock at the door. She put on her coat and went to check. As soon as I opened the door, I saw Ji Jinglei standing there in her pajamas, looking somewhat serious. She said quietly, "Big sister, I have something to tell you." I paused for a moment, then stepped aside, and she came in and sat down on the sofa with me. "Why are you still awake so late? What's wrong?" I couldn't help but ask. She lowered her head and hesitated for a while before slowly speaking. "Sister, I saw Pingyan yesterday at noon. I went to get something from his room and asked him a question, but something he said has made me very uncomfortable these past 2 days. My heart skipped a beat. Although my second sister hadn't said anything tonight, I had a feeling that what she was about to say was not simple, so I couldn't help but ask, what exactly did he say that night? That was what he said to Mom when he left. Ji Jinglei glanced at me, her tone somewhat uneasy. I suspect he meant something else. He said he wanted to give Mom a kind suggestion. Boda is Mom's adopted son, but only Mom's adopted son. I frowned and thought about it, feeling a pang of unease. Had we been too harsh on Ping in these past few years? No matter what he did, we were never satisfied. He even gave up his status as the heir to the G family, and now, when I think back, all I can remember is how I used to berate him. Although he wasn't as harsh as my third sister, Ji Jidya, he never said anything nice. The image of him turning and leaving that night with his school bag on his back has been haunting me ever since. The second sister hasn't been able to concentrate on work these past few days, spending all her time thinking about the meaning of that sentence. She muttered to herself, except for the fourth sister who's not home, almost everyone else in the family has absolutely no rational trust in Jiboda. Is the affection of living together for 18 years really more important than reason? I heard it all clearly, and my curiosity grew even stronger. Jinglei, tell me in detail, what exactly did Ping mean by what he said that night? She shook her head. I went to ask him the next day at noon, but he wouldn't say anything. He just said he didn't mean anything else, that he was just telling Mom that Boda was an adopted son. But I always felt something was wrong. Everyone knows this, so why would he emphasize it? And he even stressed the words, only yours. There must be something behind it. She didn't guess any further, but I could sense that she already had several theories in mind. The first possibility is that Boda was an adopted son, which is common knowledge. The second possibility is that if Boda is only his mother's adopted son, then he might not be his father's adopted son, which leaves only one possibility. He is his father's biological son, meaning that his father has been having an affair for nearly 20 years. The third possibility is that Boda was not his parent's child, but came from the G family in the capital, so he was considered a relative. She dared not delve into the third possibility, because she simply lacked the ability to investigate. She only thought of how her father had come to Yunqing from Beijing to start business, actually to help the Ji family of Beijing gain a foothold in Yin province. The fact that he had achieved what he had today speaks volumes about his capabilities. I'd actually had some suspicions in my mind for a while, but I couldn't verify them, and I didn't dare say them out loud. Even if I did, what if I was wrong? I needed someone to confirm them for me, to give me a definite answer. Ji Qingyin, sitting next to me, remained silent for a long while after hearing my words before slowly saying, "You came to see me just to say these things?" He thought and analyzed, realizing there were two possible interpretations. One, Boda wasn't actually a member of the Ji family, but rather someone who had been adopted. He remembered that his father had brought Boda home when his mother was disoriented after losing Ping'an. Two, Boda was simply his mother's adopted son, but not necessarily his father's. Do you think my analysis is correct? Ji Xinyan stared straight into Ji Jinglei's eyes. Ji Jinglei lowered her head, her voice trembling slightly. I didn't expect Ping and to decide to leave so quickly. This shows that he has completely given up on our Ji family. Moreover, he doesn't even let me call him brother. Her eyes immediately reddened. I sniffed and suppressed the soreness. I suddenly remembered what Gu Baibai had once said. Have you ever thought about how your own brother feels? My heart tightened, so I tentatively suggested, why don't we go ask Ping and tomorrow what he really means? Yi Yinglei nodded. He definitely doesn't want to see his sister right now. Why don't you try contacting him tomorrow at noon? Call him right after he finishes class at 12 o'clock, before he finishes eating. I've been thinking about it. I don't have a meeting tomorrow afternoon, so I'll adjust my schedule in the morning and call you. Should we go together, or should I go alone? I hadn't originally planned for her to come, but she readily agreed, saying she wanted to go. I also wanted to know if he really knew something, and how he knew. Furthermore, I wanted to apologize to him. I had been too harsh on him in the past. Whether he forgives me or not, I owe him an apology. Her expression was complicated, and I couldn't quite decipher it. I thought to myself, since she wants to go, let's go together. On Monday at noon, I called Ping'an again, tried to sound calm. Ping'an, are you at school? He seemed to hesitate for a moment, then didn't say anything but didn't hang up. I breathed a sigh of relief and continued. Could I ask for leave this afternoon? I'd like to see you. The person on the other end immediately frowned. Didn't we agree not to bother each other? Not only me, your second sister also wants to see you. He sneered. Don't use the word sister. You don't deserve it, and I don't have sisters like you. I didn't want to get bogged down in these details, so I just said, take the afternoon off. Your second sister, and I will wait for you at your school gate at 1:45. He glanced at his watch. It was almost 1 o'clock. His tone was impatient. What is it that you two have to talk about in person? Can't you just say it over the phone? I was silent for a few seconds. It wasn't convenient to talk on the phone. We'd be leaving soon and should arrive at your place between 1:30 and 1:45. He didn't say anything more, hung up, and went back to the classroom. I stared blankly at the phone that had already been hung up, not expecting him to agree to meet us. Since he agreed and didn't refuse, the card I had prepared could finally be put to use. As soon as Ji Jinglei opened her mouth, she said, "Not much, just 100,000. Before I could react, Ji Qingyan immediately shook his head, saying that he had talked to his best friend about Ping and his family, and was worried that giving her money would only deepen her misunderstanding. Ji Jinglei just smiled and said it was okay. If she didn't want it, she could take it back. She also said that she must have gone back to her adoptive father's house, which wasn't very well off. Ji Qingyan stared at her for a while before asking, "I remember that although you weren't as extreme as third sister, you weren't exactly kind to Ping either, were you?" Ji Jinglei picked up her coffee, her gaze drifting to the window, and said that if it weren't for Ping An's reminder, she probably wouldn't have thought of all that. Ultimately, Ping An has been trying very hard to gain everyone's approval all these years. She doesn't say anything about what you all think, but she herself has really gone too far. In the end, he is also our own brother, born of the same mother. Hearing this, I couldn't help but interject, "Jinglei, don't overthink it. What have I done wrong all these years? Are you doubting Boda?" She turned to look at him and asked, "Boda is right, but what did Ping An do wrong? Do we just believe everything Boda says? In that sentence of yours, there are actually two interpretations of Ping, and didn't you consider the worst one?" She said that Boda is a writer and screenwriter who has written countless characters. If she were to put herself in his shoes, she would not believe that she could endure such things for 4 years like I could. She would turn on him within a week. After listening to her string of words, Ji Qingyan didn't argue anymore. He shook his head and sighed, saying, "Let's go. It's almost time. We'll be at his school gate soon." He picked up his bag and walked out. Jinglei put down her cup and silently followed. It was almost 1:40. I walked out of the school gate and saw Ji Qingyan's Maserati parked by the roadside in the distance. I walked over and knocked on the car window. The window rolled down and his face was revealed. He said, "Get in." I opened the back door and got in. Ji Qingyan and Ji Jingmei were in the front. Upon arriving at the Western restaurant, Jinglei placed her phone aside after ordering, and an awkward silence immediately fell between the three of them. I spoke first, saying that I had taken leave and that they could just say what they needed to say. Ji Qingyan came with my second sister because he wanted to ask me what I knew about Ji Boda and what the sentence I said to Mom that day meant. In order to get the answer directly, he told me everything in one breath. He also said that my second sister felt that there was something hidden in my words, so she came to ask me if I thought Ji Boda was Dad's illegitimate son. I paused for a moment, then realized Jinglei was also staring at me, her eyes filled with expectation. Speaking of which, I'm about to take the college entrance exam. Ji Boda's grades are indeed excellent, which has nothing to do with me. But if I could make him a little mentally unstable, I feel relieved. Anyway, I originally planned to tell them, but I hadn't figured out how to say it. Now that they've come to me, I'll just tell them directly. Let Ji Boda and his son Ji Junhong face the Zhao family's wrath sooner rather than later. That's it. At that moment, I spoke with a hint of mockery, my voice carrying an undisguised chill. Ji Boda's biological mother was named Qin Balian and lived in Building 13, Phase 2, Century Garden, Haidong District. That's right, he is your half-brother. Your mother and you all dote on your father like a bunch of fools. Not only do you have 2 biological sons and 1 outsider son, but you also protect him like a treasure, even more than you protect your own eyes. Have I made myself clear enough? As soon as the words left his mouth, Ji Qingyan was completely stunned, his mouth agape in shock. Ji Jinglei, standing beside him, couldn't help but cover her mouth as well, and the air instantly turned icy cold. But then, Ji Jinglei asked me rapidly, "How did you know? Why didn't you say so sooner?" Ji Qingyan pressed on, asking if there was any evidence. He didn't seem completely disbelieving, since I had clearly stated my name and address, so naturally someone would investigate whether Qin Balian really existed. But he just refused to admit it. That Boda, whom he had always doted on, was actually his half-brother. If Boda himself knew about this, wouldn't that be even more terrifying? The moment he said that, my anger flared up. Why should I have any evidence? When Ji Qingyan threw things at me and insulted me, why didn't you ask for evidence? When Ji Boda slandered me, did you ask him for any evidence? How I know is none of your business. Just because Miss Ji asked me, does that mean I have to give you evidence? Whether you believe me or not is your own business. What does it have to do with me? If you want me to spread rumors, then go ahead, I don't care anyway. Seeing that I was getting angry, Ji Jinglei quickly tried to persuade me. Pingyan, calm down, your older sister was just saying it casually. But I wasn't about to stop there. He just casually asks me to provide evidence? Who does he think he is? Is he a judge or a policeman? Even if I have evidence, why should I give it to him? I'm only telling you this because I know you're not completely stupid. Otherwise, I would be waiting to see the Ji family make a fool of themselves. Aren't you supposed to be the most shameless? You've worked hard for 18 years, raising a 2+1, a term used to describe a child who is both rich and poor. And in the end, you have to hand over your entire fortune. TSK, how wonderful. I'm already looking forward to seeing how the news will be written when it breaks. My words instantly darkened Ji Qingyan's face. He coldly told me to watch my mouth. She's still your mother, we're your sisters, and you still have Ji family blood in your veins. Hearing this, I sneered. Miss Ji, have you lost your memory, or are you just plain stupid? Last week, I severed all ties with you. She is your mother and your trusted brother Boda. I have nothing to do with you anymore, so don't try to associate with me. Do you really think that what you did to me in the past makes you worthy of being my sister? That woman doesn't deserve to be my mother either. Even if we're related by blood, I don't want you anymore, understand? It's me who doesn't want you, not you who don't want me. Do you understand? Ji Jinglei looked at me silently. This person who used to call me little brother was now as unfamiliar as if there was a mountain between us. A feeling of sadness suddenly welled up in her heart. She was not even angry at my anger, but felt more guilty. She reached out and grabbed my hand, her voice trembling with a low sob. Pingyan, I'm sorry, I was wrong. I shouldn't have said those hurtful things to you without even knowing the facts. I was bad to you in the past. Please come home with us. I promise I'll treat you well from now on, okay? Upon hearing this, I was stunned. Not only me, but even Ji Qingyan was taken aback. Judging from his expression, he clearly wanted me to go back to the Ji family, but I knew in my heart that even if I did, he would definitely force me to apologize to my parents and that bastard Boda first. After all, in their eyes, no matter who was right or wrong, it was wrong of me to kick someone in the balls that day, not to mention that I even beat him into the hospital. While he was still making plans in his mind, I shook off Ji Jinglei's hand and stood up. No need, I'm fine now. I looked at them, my tone cold. I have nothing to do with you anymore. Didn't you always say I coveted your Ji family's things? Now that I'm gone, nothing you own has anything to do with me. I can support myself. I don't need your pity. After I finished speaking and turned to leave, I paused and added, I've already explained what you came to ask, but I'm not obligated to tell you for free. Remember to pay me. Upon hearing this, Ji Qingyan's face immediately darkened, and he was inexplicably enraged. Not coveting the Ji family's things? Money, money, money. What else are you thinking about besides money? Fine, name your price. Ji Jinglei quickly pulled him away. Pingyan, don't be angry. That's just how my sister is. I raised an eyebrow. That's your sister. She has nothing to do with me. Don't talk about your older sister in front of me. Once I no longer acknowledge you, we'll be strangers. Anyway, this information isn't free. Considering your pitiful future might make me feel better. I'll sell it to you for a measly 100,000 today. If I sold it to some big influencer, it would be worth at least 200,000 or 300,000. So, Miss G, would you like me to write down my green bubble account number for you? Seeing that Ji Qingyan was trembling with anger, Ji Jinglei quickly stopped him and then frantically pulled out her phone to search for my account. Watching her scroll through it, I already knew she must have deleted me a long time ago. I took out my wallet, pulled out a bank card, and slammed it on the table. Take a picture and transfer the money to my card. Ji Jinglei bit her lip, clearly annoyed, but finally pulled a card from her bag and threw it on the table. There's exactly 100,000 in this card. I cut her off immediately. What do I need your card for? Transfer the money to my card, and then don't bother me with any of the messy things that happen to any member of the Ji family. She quickly took a picture and was about to say something to ease the tension, but I picked up my bank card, turned around, and left without even glancing at them again. After I left, Ji Qingyan's face was as black as the bottom of a pot, and he stared at the table without saying a word. Ji Jinglei didn't bother to say anything more to him and left him behind, chasing after him out of the coffee shop. She quickly caught up with me. Pingyan, can I say a few words? I stopped and turned to stare at her. Her breathing was rapid, and she spoke quickly. I know I haven't treated you well since you came to the G family, and it's my fault. Can you forgive me? I'm not asking you to go back to the G family, nor am I asking you to forgive everyone. I sincerely want to apologize to you. Her eyes reddened, and she looked like she was about to cry at any moment. I made mistakes in the past. I shouldn't have helped G Boda's side, and I often pretended not to see you at home. It's all my fault. Pingyan, please forgive me, okay? I waited until she finished speaking before I spoke. Miss G, after severing ties, I have absolutely no connection with your G family or any other matters. Let bygones be bygones. Going back to the past is impossible. There's no need to apologize for those things. I've already forgotten everything from the past. Yet, Ji Jinglei's tears still fell. I actually felt quite guilty and uneasy, but you interrupted him and said it wasn't necessary, that his guilt was his own business and shouldn't involve me, and that we should all try to be strangers and not bother each other. After saying goodbye, Ji Jinglei stood there blankly, watching your departing figure, tears streaming down his face silently. His heart was in turmoil, filled with regret and self-loathing. Why had he treated his only younger brother that way? Why had he been so kind to that imposter? I remained seated without getting up or looking at him. I wondered to myself, could what you said have been intentional? Could you have arranged for someone to wait for me at that address? But then I thought it was impossible. Even if you're smart, you don't have that much money to do something like that. Thinking about this, my thoughts wouldn't stop. If father had been hiding G Boda's true identity all along, wouldn't that mean? My father had been having an affair for 20 years. How can I accept this? If my mother knew, she definitely wouldn't be able to accept it either. You bastard, revealing something like this after leaving the G family. Are you trying to tear the G family apart? That's incredibly ruthless. All we did was pay less attention to you over the past 4 years. If outsiders find out about this, wouldn't the G family lose all face? But if what you said is true, what will happen to the G family? I'm really confused and don't know what to do. Saturday arrived in the blink of an eye. I bought the lottery tickets for the 3 times this week after school in the afternoon. I bought 5 different sets of numbers, 5 shares of each set. I'm not sure how much money I'll win in the end, but I believe it won't be less than 30 million and at least 20 million after tax. This amount is more than enough for my future plans, and I might not even be able to use it all. The lottery is a game for whimsical people and those who have premeditated their actions. I'm not sure if things will be the same after my rebirth as in my previous life. I'll still be nervous when I need to be. On the other hand, this lottery is the only way I can verify that there won't be any major changes in the future. That night, I didn't watch TV. Instead, I sat quietly in my room waiting for the lottery results at 8 o'clock. I watched the live broadcast on my phone. When the last ball was 14, my heart was pounding so hard I couldn't help but let out a small cheer of excitement. Then I rolled around on the bed several times until I calmed down. I carefully put the lottery ticket back into my phone case and started planning the first thing I'd do after claiming the prize: buy a house for Mr. and Mrs. Chen Xiaohua, a spacious, large house. I also want to buy a set for Hui Hui, and I want to buy the small shop that I've rented for over 20 years and give it to them. Then, with an irrepressible smile, I spread out the homework papers that I had to finish this weekend. Meanwhile, Ji Qingyan and Ji Jinglei had talked several times this week, and they were surprised to find that when they truly stepped outside the Ji family circle and looked at the daily events in the family from an outsider's perspective, you'll notice something amiss, such as gibberish obedience and docility, which seems a bit excessive. I had actually noticed the younger brother's behavior a while ago. Although his clinging to his mother wasn't too deliberate, you could still see some signs of affectation if you looked closely. If you hadn't pointed it out, the family would probably still think he was truly excellent and filial, just like before. Sis, haven't you started yet? Jinglei asked, sitting cross-legged on the large chair in the room, her voice a little anxious. I sighed. This was the 3rd time we talked about this week. Not yet. I really can't make up my mind. My mind was in turmoil. I'm afraid that if it turns out to be true, Mom won't be able to handle it, and I'm even more afraid that our family will fall apart. Looking at my intelligent and wise younger sister across from me, I felt a little ashamed. She knew that I had become the president of G's company after only 1 year, and that I was a goddess in the eyes of countless people in Yunqing. But why did this kind of family matter become so difficult to decide? Sister, Hongjuan's coming-of-age banquet is coming up soon. Do you want to wait until then to talk about it? Jinglei frowned anxiously. You know the custom of wealthy families. At this time, they usually announce the identity of the future heir. Once it is announced and something goes wrong, it will be too late. Of course, I know that the timing of the leak is very important, and the impact is much greater. Jinglei, it's not that I don't want to, it's just that I'm really in a difficult position. Sister, if we drag this out any longer, it will have a greater impact on the G family. The truth can't be hidden, and the later it's discovered, the more it will hurt Mom. I don't want to hesitate any longer. I absolutely cannot let her continue to deceive Mom, nor do I want the G family to fall into the hands of outsiders. I shook my head. At most, he's an illegitimate child, still a descendant of the G family. How could he be in the hands of an outsider like you described? Jinglei sneered. If it's really what you think, I'd rather he were an adopted son, with no blood relation to the G family. But what if they were related by blood? Have you ever thought that one day he'll bring his biological mother in? What will Mom and us sisters be then? Will we just be doing all the work for someone else? Sister, give me a straight answer. Are you going to do it or not? If not, I'm going to hire paparazzi to investigate Sheen Balian right now, and I'll pay for it myself. I rubbed my temples and said softly, I've already given the word, but we haven't confirmed when it will start. The people investigating are still waiting for my message. Can you please not cause any more trouble? She raised an eyebrow, adding to the chaos. I'm setting things right. This can't be delayed any longer. No matter when you investigate, I'll contact my people right now. She reached for her phone on the table and started scrolling through her contacts. I quickly got up and went over to her, snatching her phone away. No, Jinglei, let me think about it some more. This will have too much of an impact on the G family and Mom. Jinglei said coldly, Sister, I really didn't expect you to be so indecisive. You really disappoint me. You're not even as good as Pingyan. At least he knows when to cut his losses. But what about you? A president with assets of tens of billions. How can you be so incompetent in such a crucial matter? I really misjudged you. Sis, I'm coming clean with you. Whether you investigate or not, I'm going to do it myself. It's been such a waste of my time these past few days. She stood up and took her phone back. I said, even if the G family falls apart, I'm capable of earning my own money. I don't need you to support me, so don't try to brush me off with that. But you think about it yourself. If the G family really collapses, what are you planning to do? Are you going to marry someone and help manage another family's company? You'd better think this through carefully. I'm going to sleep now. You can go back to your room. Ji Qingyan opened her mouth, but couldn't say anything, and walked out of my room dejectedly. After the door closed, I slowly opened the drawer and pulled out a family photo from the bottom. In the photo, I was standing on the far side, my eyes still sparkling with excitement. But that hint of loneliness was clearly visible. Ji Boda, standing in the middle, remained calm, as if it were only natural for him to be in the center position. On Tuesday, I took the day off to receive the award. I bought a cheap pair of sunglasses on the street, put on a hat and a mask, and turned down the interviews and donations. Clutching the prize money of nearly 24 million yuan, I took a taxi and drove around the city before returning to school. At this moment, the only thing I was waiting for was the college entrance examination. I devoted all my time to doing practice questions, and I even remembered most of the questions from that year's exam clearly. For me, as long as the scores are released, it makes me feel less bitter because my grades were already very good, and now the impression of hard work adds to that, so I can convince anyone who doubts me. Time flies. These days, they shuttle between school and home every day, studying and returning home on time. Chen Xiaohua and Lu Qing also know the importance of the college entrance examination, so starting in June, they close the door early and go home after lunch every day. They prepared a nutritious meal, especially for me for dinner. I didn't say thank you in any particular way, because all I could do was repay them with my best grades. On the 7th, the first day of the college entrance examination, 3 invigilators were constantly patrolling the examination room at the foreign language school. I focused intently on answering the questions, and even though I had finished writing long ago, I didn't hand in my paper early. I only handed in my paper and left with everyone else when the bell rang. After 2 days of exams, I'm almost certain of my score. It's the same as the college entrance exam in my previous life, and this time it's definitely higher. I don't dare hope for a perfect score, but I should be well over 720. Now the only thing I need to think about is which school and which major to choose. Early on the 10th, I got up and went to help out at the small restaurant, making wontons and steam buns, my hands constantly busy. By 10 a.m., All the customers had left, and I finally sat down to check my phone, wanted to see if the lottery news was still trending. There are tons of messages online, mostly skeptical ones. But the skepticism isn't about me winning the lottery, but about the winning numbers for this draw, since there were 3 first prize winners. Some people were skeptical, while others believed the official reports, but everyone thought the numbers were incredible. It was the first time in history that 7 consecutive numbers had appeared, something that had only existed in theory before, but now it had actually happened. I squinted at my phone and smiled for a while, then made up my mind. I had to buy a house. Because I knew that next September, the year after I died in my previous life, 2 new subway lines would begin construction, and this news would cause housing prices in some areas to skyrocket in the future. I've always been planning to buy 2 houses along the subway line in the future, and then a few apartments so that my parents won't have to keep running this small restaurant and can live a more stable life just by collecting rent. Once the idea popped into my head, I couldn't stop thinking about it. I told my parents, I'm going out for a walk. There aren't any customers around right now anyway. Upon hearing this, Lu Qing immediately agreed, saying, Go ahead, go ahead. We told you to go out and have some fun, but you insisted on coming to the shop to keep us company. You and your dad are enough. Chen Xiaohua nodded repeatedly, telling me to spend more time with my classmates, saying that I would make new friends after I went to university. Without saying much, I left the restaurant and opened the map to find a nearby real estate agency. This matter dragged on for more than 2 weeks, and the only thing Ji Jinglei could verify was, it's true that Ji Junhong went to Haidong District twice. As for Ji Boda, he started indulging in debauchery and womanizing with young female students the day after the college entrance examination, but this evidence is not enough to convict him. To put it bluntly, if Ji Junhong simply has a mistress outside, it's not a rare thing in wealthy circles. And even if Ji Boda really did rape an innocent girl, the other family wouldn't be thrown into chaos because of it. In either case, they wouldn't care, so he continued to wait anxiously for the latest news, utterly disappointed by his eldest sister's inaction. In the end, he paid out of his own pocket to hire a few people to help keep watch. What he wanted wasn't the gossip, but concrete evidence of Gibbon and his father appearing together at Century Garden. I had already explained their relationship to him, but without evidence, it was all just empty talk. His real anger was directed at his father, Ji Junhong, who had kept the whole family in the dark for nearly 20 years. What kind of man could pretend to be a loving couple in front of his children for over 20 years? I can't even imagine such hypocrisy. He also speculated that perhaps his parents were enemies long ago, or that something happened more than 20 years ago that led to the existence of Qin Beilian, but all of these speculations would require evidence. In 1 week, I followed real estate agents to almost all 5 districts north of the Yangtze River. After careful selection, I finally settled on 11 small second-hand apartments suitable for couples and single renters, ranging in size from over 80 square meters to 120 square meters. In this round, I spent over 21 million yuan, and all the houses were bought in Chen Shuhui's name. I didn't keep a single one for myself. Looking at my mobile bank balance, I suddenly realized that money really doesn't last long. At this point, my preparations for leaving home were almost complete. I've had the property certificate for almost a week now, and I can check my college entrance exam results tomorrow. I'm not in a rush to throw the certificates on the table and announce my big win to my family. I plan to wait until the results are out and then share the good news and honor with my adoptive parents first. Then, entrust this wealth to Hui Hui with peace of mind, so they can completely relax. In this way, Hui Hui will never have to worry about money for the rest of her life. With these properties as a safety net, the elderly couple won't have to work so hard anymore. It was almost 7 p.m. on the 21st. My new computer, new tablet, and phone were already on the bed. I was looking forward to checking my grades after 8 p.m. that night. Lu Qing asked me somewhat cautiously, Have you checked Pinyin yet? Chen Xiaohua didn't answer, but Chen Shui turned around at the dining table and said, Not yet. My brother said we'll check together when you get back. Chen Xiaohua laughed and said, Okay, let's check together. Pinyin is definitely fine. I washed my hands and quickly sat down on the sofa. Lu Qing urged me to check quickly, saying that I was sure I did well on the exam. Seeing my adoptive parents' anxious expressions, I smiled and reassured them, Don't worry, I have a pretty good idea of what's going on. Then I got up, went back to my room, took out my exam admission ticket, and placed it on a coffee table. Immediately, the whole family gathered around, 3 pairs of eyes fixed on my phone screen. I opened the app, found a query window, and entered my admission ticket number. I thought I could see my score, but instead, a pop-up window appeared, Your ranking has entered the top 50 in the province. Please check the details on the 27th. At that moment, I felt confident, but when I looked up, I saw their confused faces. I handed my phone to Lu Qing and said, "Mom, I'm in the top 50 in the province." Lu Qing held the phone for a while, then handed it to Chen Xiaohua and asked what this meant and why there was no score. As soon as Chen Xiaohua put down his phone, Chen Shui snatched it away. I explained with a smile that the scores of the top 50 in the province would not be announced for the time being. Upon hearing this, Chen Xiaohua grabbed Lu Qing's hand and grinned from ear to ear, saying, "Top 30 in the province. Huh, that means at least 700 points." I smiled and replied, "I don't know the exact score yet. We'll find out in a few days." Lu Qing's eyes immediately reddened. Chen Xiaohua patted her hand to comfort her, saying, "Since that's the case, there's no need to rush." Lu Qing couldn't help but shed tears, saying, "Ping'an, you're such a good child." Chen Shui also reached out and hugged me, laughing and saying, "Oh my God, if my brother's score is over 730, he might be the top scorer in the province. This is a good thing. Why are you crying?" Lu Qing hugged me and said, "Silly girl, you have no idea how much your brother has suffered these past 4 years." I quickly reassured her, "Mom, don't say things like that. I was able to do so well on the exam because you all instilled good habits in me from a young age. This is all thanks to you." Chen Xiaohua let out a long sigh of relief, stood up, and said, "Today is a good day. Ping'an will definitely get into Tsinghua or Peking University. This is the happiest day of my life. Such a good child doesn't get any attention in the Fong family. They're blind." As he spoke, he laughed and pulled me to have a couple of drinks. He also told his wife to fry some peanuts and prepare some snacks to go with the drinks, saying they were going to have a good time. Meanwhile, accompanied by his family, G. Boda checked his scores. He had set a target score of around 640 when he was estimating his score, but the screen showed 653. He finally breathed a sigh of relief, handed the phone to Zhao Wei, and cautiously asked how many points Ping had scored. Zhao Wei's smiling face suddenly froze after hearing this. She turned to Ji Qingyan and said, "Qingyan, why don't you call and ask Ping how many points he got?" Ji Junhong's expression had clearly darkened by this point. I thought to myself, what does it matter to us how many points he gets? Ji Qingyan had already silently taken out his phone and was about to make a call when Ji Jinglei suddenly grabbed his hand. She smiled and asked, "You did so well on the exam. Are you planning to study abroad or stay in China for university?" Ji Jie smiled and said, "I'm definitely going abroad, but my sister won't want me to go. It'll be years before Mom misses me." As for Ji Ping'an, so what if he has good grades? Sister, think about it. Our dad definitely won't give him money to go abroad. His adoptive parents just run a small restaurant. Where would they get the money to send him to study abroad? It's obviously impossible. Besides, they have a biological daughter. They wouldn't spend money on him even if they had it. If you ask me, if he can get into a 985 university, he'll be incredibly lucky. He might only get into a 211 university. Ji Qingyan looked up at Ji Boda and asked, "So what do you think, Boda?" Zhao Wei put down her phone, looked at Ji Junhong, and said, "Maybe we shouldn't go abroad. If Boda goes abroad, I want to go with him." Ji Junhong chuckled twice after hearing this and said that Boda's trip abroad had been arranged, but the details of the donation had not yet been finalized. He then looked at Boda with a face full of satisfaction and asked, "Which school do you want to go to?" Jibber lowered his head, seemingly hesitant, and said he couldn't bear to leave his mother, nor could he bear to leave them. If he were to stay in China, he wanted to go to Shanghai, not Beijing. Zhao Wei immediately laughed upon hearing this and said, "Then don't go to Beijing. Shanghai is closer to home. You were there when you were little, so someone will take care of you, and you'll definitely have no problem making a living." Ji Boda didn't speak, but only glanced up at his father. Seeing this, Zhao Wei said again, "Then go to Shanghai. Mom will go with you." But Ji Junhong shook his head and said, "Forget it. Let's go abroad. Study hard for a few years, and when you come back, you can learn to manage the company directly from your eldest sister. In the future, the Ji family will be handed over to you." Ji Boda then hurriedly spoke up, "What about Brother Ping'an? Are we really just going to leave him?" After saying that, he lowered his head and remained silent. Ji Jie sneered and said, "Boda, are you stupid? He didn't want to come back. It's not like we forced him to leave. He brought it all on himself. Why should we care about him? Let him wallow in the slums." After asking that question, Ji Jinglei didn't say anything more, only staring intently at Ji Boda and his father's expressions. She had been observing from the moment Boda uttered those words. She might have previously belittled you, the quiet and reserved one at home, just like her third sister, Gigi Dia. But now she realized that her third sister was the truly brainless one in the family. Boda's two sentences, seemingly meant to be kind to you, were actually a ploy to incite your father and third sister, making them even more determined to sever ties with you. She didn't understand why her third sister showed such strong disgust, without even trying to hide it. She also didn't understand why her mother seemed reluctant to part with her, yet pretended to be indifferent. Had Boda been bewitching her all this time, she didn't speak, but just sat quietly on the sofa, her eyes fixed on Ji Qingyin, and patted Ji Jidia's shoulder. I understand what you mean. Ping'an is your younger brother after all. It's fine if you don't like him, but there's really no need to belittle him like that. Let's find out about Ping'an's grades in a few days. Since Boda wants to know, let's tell him when we have accurate information. But to be honest, it's not that important. If Boda really plans to go abroad, he should first choose a good school. If he doesn't go abroad, then go to Shanghai is also a good choice, especially in finance. Shanghai's financial circle is top-notch in China, and few places can compare. Ji Jinglei glanced at her eldest sister, her eyes flashing, then looked at Ji Boda, who was deep in thought. Just as she was about to speak, Boda said first, I've decided to go abroad. Living and studying alone abroad should help me learn to be independent faster. All these years at home, you've spoiled me so much that I feel like I can't live without you. He then turned to Zhao Wei, his smile a little helpless. Mom, if you really can't bear to see me leave, why don't you come abroad with me? Zhao Wei was taken aback and hesitated for a while before stammering. Well, let's talk about it after your coming-of-age banquet. Isn't it too early to decide now? She was always indecisive, procrastinating when making decisions. Ji Junhong coughed lightly. Then let's go abroad. It's settled. Ji Qingyin glanced at Ji Jinglei, stood up, and said, That's settled then. I'll go back to my room first. Ji Jinglei also stood up. I'll go back to my room too. Ji Jidia, carrying her bag, asked with a smile, Boda, do you want to go out and play with your sister? Back in his room, Ji Jinglei lit a cigarette, his face somewhat gloomy. Big sister, didn't you realize that everything Boda said today was intentional? Ji Qingyan sighed. If you look at it with prejudice, then of course it will seem intentional. But if his original intention was just a simple question, why think the worst? It's normal for children to have a competitive spirit. Don't overthink it. Ji Jinglei was too lazy to listen to these useless pieces of advice, so he asked directly, Have you found anything these past few days? Ji Qingyin shook his head. Nothing useful, but I can confirm that Dad is indeed in contact with that Qin Balian. He went to her place 3 times in the past 2 weeks. Ji Jinglei added softly, but that's not enough. It can't prove the relationship between Boda and him. I've already withdrawn the commission. I have other ways to prove this. Ji Qingyan looked up. I've thought of that too. It's very simple to prove it. Just find someone to get Qin Balian's hair and do a paternity test. What I'm worried about isn't the result, but how Mom will accept it. If she can't accept it, what can we do? Ji Jinglei gave a bitter smile. What else can I do? I'll take care of it. Ji Qingyan was silent for a moment, then suddenly stared into Ji Jinglei's eyes. So you don't trust me? Do you think I would lie for the sake of this family? I admit, I don't want the outcome to be true. I'd rather Boda and Dad had no blood relation at all, so the family wouldn't fall apart, Mom wouldn't be heartbroken, and everyone could still live together peacefully. Even if Ping'an doesn't come back, this family will still be good. To put it more bluntly, sacrificing Ping in an exchange for the stability of this family and the reputation of the Ji family, I think it's worth it. Anyway, neither Mom and Dad, nor any of us like him, right? I couldn't help but yell at Jinglei, a fire burning inside me. Did you have to tear this family apart to feel satisfied? Jinglei, how did you become like this? Weren't you and Lao Sen always targeting Ping'an? Although I don't really care about him and rarely say hurtful things, I remember that the first person to tell him to get out of the Ji family was yourself. Ji Qingyan's barrage of questions broke Jing lay down completely. She lowered her head, staring at her hands, tears streaming down her face and on her arms, her voice choked with sobs as she spoke. Yes, it was me who kept speaking ill of him, and even the third sister was someone I instigated to target Ping'an. It was all my fault. I shouldn't have told him to get lost, nor should I have spoken ill of him in front of my parents, and I shouldn't have encouraged Ji Dai to hurt him. He looked up, and his tear-streaked face softened my heart. He said he was wrong and apologized, and told me not to hesitate any longer. He said I should tell Mom about this, and if Boda really was Dad's biological son, then I shouldn't hide it from her. My heart tightened, and I quickly interrupted him. Mom's health has always been poor. Have you thought about whether she can accept it if we tell her directly? If something happens, I'll have to carry this burden for the rest of my life. Jinglei argued while sobbing. We can't keep this a secret forever. If everything in the family is inherited by Boda, as Dad said, then what are we? What about all the sacrifices you've made for this family? And what about my third and fourth sisters? My fourth sister is still in school and should be able to accept it, but my third brother has a temper and has done many extreme things. I pinched my brow, feeling incredibly annoyed. Okay, stop crying. Crying is making me even more confused. Let's think about this again. Jing Lei wiped away her tears, her tone frighteningly firm. No matter what you plan to do, I absolutely cannot accept that illegitimate child staying in the house. The person who should really leave this family is Jiboda. I waved my hand and said, okay, you can go back to your room first. I'll go collect some hair samples for a paternity test in the next couple of days. Jinglei stood up and coldly said, I don't care whether you do it or not, and I don't trust you. I'll find a way to do it myself. Don't even think about hiding it from Mom. I'll tell her directly when the results come out. It's better to have a short pain than a long one. I'll take care of this. I stared at him blankly, feeling as if a stone was pressing on my chest. You're really going to drive me crazy. Fine, do whatever you want. On the other side, Chun Xiaohua's family was sitting around the dining table in the living room, eating a KFC family bucket. I gave the remaining 3 chicken legs to my godparents and Hui Hui, then went back to my room. When I came out, I was carrying a stack of bright red property deeds with an unopened tablet and phone on top, and a laptop bag slung over my shoulder. Seeing that everyone in the family was staring at me, I smiled and put the things on the sofa, saying, Mom and Dad, Hui Hui, these are all for you. Xiaohua and Lu Qing stared at the stack of property certificates, their hands trembling as they flipped through one. Chen Xiaohua then picked up another. Chun Shu Hui's first reaction was to grab her phone, exclaiming with delight, Wow, brother, is this a gift for me? I smiled and ruffled her hair. These are all gifts for you. There are 11 houses in total, and the computer, tablet, and phone are all yours too. Chen Xiaohua had only drunk 2 glasses of wine, and his mind was still very clear. He stared at the property certificate very carefully, and the owner was clearly written as Chun Shui. He couldn't help but ask, Pingyan, where did you get the money? I was flipping through that stack of property deeds when Lu Qing, while looking at them, couldn't help but ask me where I got so much money to buy so many houses. She kept opening and looking at each one. Chun Shui was also unpacking them next to me, half-jokingly saying, Did I win the lottery? I smiled and nodded, telling them that I won 5 grand prizes and 5 third prizes in the last double color ball lottery draw last month. Lu Qing's eyes widened suddenly. She put down the last property certificate, her eyes red, and asked me why my name wasn't on it. Chen Xiaohua was still stunned, and Chun Shui also opened one of the certificates, puzzled, but suddenly screamed, asking why her name was on it. Then he grabbed the second and third books. Chen Xiaohua's lips were trembling as he asked me why I was doing this. It's my money. Wouldn't it be better to keep it for myself? He said. I laughed and said, Mom and Dad, all these houses are under Hui's name, and they're all old, dilapidated, and second-hand houses. I've already contacted an agent to rent them out, and the rent will be the main source of income for the family. You should renovate that restaurant and only serve lunch and dinner. Don't get up at 2 or 3 in the morning to work every day. In my opinion, you can become landlords and landladies right now. I never expected to win the lottery, but I've already bought the house. Don't worry about it. I'm capable of earning money myself, and I can buy you even better houses in the future. Chen Xiaohua sighed and said, We can't give her all of it. Shouldn't you keep some for yourself? I calmly replied, Mom and Dad, of course I thought about it when I did this. Hui is your only daughter. Now that you have me, she will get married eventually. These houses, as premarital property, won't become someone else's property. They will be her future security, and she won't have to live a hard life no matter what. Hui pouted and interjected, Brother, how old am I? You're already saying all this. I pinched her cheek and said, You're my sister. It's only right that I give it to you. The computer is also for you. Then I turned to my parents and said that the house had already been bought and was in her name, and I definitely wouldn't take it back. Besides, I still had over 2 million yuan, which would be enough for my future education or whatever I did. Moreover, I could earn money, and my college entrance exam scores would definitely be high, so you didn't need to worry about me, whether it was where I went to school or how I lived. I'll live in the school dormitory and eat in the cafeteria. Well, you can stay home and collect rent and live a comfortable life. You can open the restaurant whenever you want or close it when you don't. Anyway, you won't be short of money in the future. Lu Qing wiped away her tears and shook her head, saying no, she couldn't take my things. Chen Xiaohua nodded, agreeing that it made sense. You're still a child, he said. There's no reason for us to start eating and drinking your things. We can still work and support you through university. We can afford to support you even if you go on to graduate school or a doctorate. I smiled and said, don't worry. Things will only get better. I was even thinking of getting you a new car, but I was worried you might not like it if I just bought one. Chen Xiaohua immediately waved his hand and said, no, don't spend any more money. Money is hard to earn these days, but it's easy to spend it. I was still thinking about what had just happened. Chen Xiaohua told me not to waste money in the future, and I immediately smiled and nodded. Okay, I know. Actually, I barely ate anything. I just wanted to take this opportunity to tell you that I'm not only good at studying, but I'm also lucky. If it weren't for you taking me in, Mom and Dad, I wouldn't have had the chance to win the lottery. Lu Qing couldn't help but nod in agreement. Chen Xiaohua sighed and told us to continue eating, while also asking his wife to clean up the rest of the food. That night, the two of them tossed and turned in bed, unable to sleep. Lu Qing lowered her voice and said, we can't take those houses. Xiaohua understood, but the name was already on Hui's name, and it couldn't be changed in a short time. It would also cost a lot of money. Besides, changing his name requires ping and signature, which he probably won't agree to. So let's put this matter aside for now. When he goes to university in Beijing, we'll go with him. At worst, I'll ask them to help Ping in and give him some convenience. Lu Qing hesitated, then said, Xiaohua, you suffered so much back then and didn't beg them. Would it be inappropriate to go now? I don't even know if Ping would need these things. Xiaohua sighed softly and said, he calls me dad, so I have to do this. Otherwise, I wouldn't have the face to be his father. I had just gotten back to my room when my phone rang. It was a text from Ji Jinglei asking about my college entrance exam scores. I glanced at it and tossed the phone aside without intending to reply. Although she was the first person to show me kindness, those terrible past events were in the past, and I didn't want them to affect my future again. Time flies, and before we knew it, it was the 27th, the day the results would be released. That day, Mr. and Mrs. Chen Xiaohua didn't even open their shop. Hui went to school, and the three of us sat on the sofa waiting for the time to come. Lu Qing couldn't help but ask me, Ping'an, have you decided which school you want to go to? I laughed and said I'd already decided. I major in finance at Beijing University. We could talk about the rest once I got there. I figured I'd buy a house in Beijing soon, so you wouldn't need to stay in hotels when you came. Chen Xiaohua was taken aback and said, no need. I already have a house in Beijing. It's just that we didn't get it back. I asked curiously, do you still have a house in Beijing? Apart from those past few years, I've never seen you go to Beijing since I was a child. Lu Qing hesitated, glancing at Xiaohua. He shook his head and said, let's not talk about that now. Checking the scores is more important. I looked down and started refreshing the webpage. A moment later, the score appeared, 732 points. I showed the screen to my parents before saying, this score should put me in the top 3 in the province, right? Last year's top scorer only got 727. I'm 5 points higher than him. However, this year's questions were easier than last year's, and there might be someone who scored higher than me. Lu Qing and Chen Xiaohua were filled with excitement. If he really was the provincial champion, that would be amazing. Lu Qing couldn't help but ask again, if the results are announced, will the Ji family come looking for you again? I quickly reassured her mother, don't worry, I won't go anywhere. Although I am their child by blood, the kindness of raising me is more important than the kindness of giving me life. I remember how they treated me before. I've already made up my mind that no matter what happens outside, I won't leave this family. Of course, I still have to go to university when school starts. My grades just came out, and I expect someone will call or come to my door soon. Thinking of this, I casually asked what they planned to do. Chen Xiaohua just shook his head and said that it was his own business and they wouldn't say a word. If things got really bad, he would just turn off his phone. As he spoke, he simply took out his phone and turned it off. Lu Qing saw this and followed suit. I stood up, feeling rather calm. I had already chosen the finance department at Peking University, and I wasn't considering anything else. If I really couldn't avoid it, I would just tell others my choice. On the other hand, after collecting Ji Jinghong's hair in the bedroom and obtaining Ji Boda's hair, Ji Jinglei prepared 3 samples and sent them to 3 different places for testing in order to ensure the accuracy of the identification results. Although the results haven't come out yet, he's already seen them on the news. This year's top science student is named Ji Ping'an. The moment that name appeared, it felt like he'd been pricked by a needle. Not only the name, but also that face was unforgettable. At dinner time, he came downstairs earlier than usual and sat in the living room to wait. His father came back with Ji Boda, and his mother was still unaware of what had happened. Seeing his father and younger brother enter together, a strange thought suddenly popped into his head. Had he gone to see Chin Balian? Ji Boda looked unwell, but after changing his clothes upstairs, he returned to normal. His eldest sister, Ji Qingyin, hadn't returned. She was probably attending some business banquet. So, tonight, only his father, mother, himself, Ji Jie, and Ji Boda were at the dinner table. In wealthy families, there are strict rules for meals, and talking is not allowed. The Ji family is no exception, but it's not as strict. After all, the mother always can't help but put food on Ji Boda's plate, ask about his well-being, and inquire about his situation at school. Just as Ji Jinglei was about to mention Ji Ping'an from the news, Ji Boda spoke up. Mom, Ping'an got the top score in the province's science exam. Zhao Wei's hand, which was picking up food, froze in midair before she put the food into his bowl, her eyes flashing with surprise. Really? I looked at her and sighed inwardly. This weak-willed mother of hers easily got teary-eyed, and sure enough, her eyes were red again, leaving me speechless. She turned to her father and said, Junhong, how about we call Ping'an back to celebrate? Zhao Wei looked at Ji Junhong. He didn't say anything, but his expression was clearly very bad. Ji Jie sneered and interjected. Why call him back? Mom, he broke off all ties with you a long time ago. He just doesn't want us anymore. Why bother going back to him? Besides, Boda did well on the exam. Even if he doesn't go abroad, he can easily get into a top university. That country bumpkin, let him stay out there by himself. It's just an eyesore to have him come back. Ji Boda picked up the serving chopsticks and put another piece of food on Zhao Wei's plate, saying gently, Third sister, don't say that about Brother Ping'an. He's having a hard time all by himself out there. I wonder if anyone cares about him. I think we should ask him to come back. The college entrance exam is over, and I plan to move out for a while before I go abroad to study. Then he won't be able to see me when he comes back, and maybe that will make him stay. Zhao Wei slapped him. What nonsense are you talking about? Where are you moving to? Mom will go with you. Ji Junhong frowned and interrupted coldly. Shut up. Don't mention that unfilial son in front of me again. If you're so capable, make a name for yourself. So what if he's the top science student? Does he really think knowledge is wealth? Dad's words really resonated with me. What does it matter if you're the top scorer in the country? It can't compare to what I'll inherit in the future. Ji Dai laughed along and spoke even more bluntly. The foundation of a wealthy family is accumulated over generations. It's laughable that someone actually thinks they can compete with a wealthy family on their own. For people like Ping'an, studying is the only path to success. But we were born and raised in Rome. What does he have to compare with you? Don't say anything that lowers your status anymore. Just listen to your father. Zhao Wei nodded in agreement, saying that although she was highly educated, she had never done anything since marrying my father. This was the family's heritage, something ordinary people could never imagine. She told me to relax, eat my food, and not to overthink things. She added that if I didn't come back safely, that would be fine, but if I moved away, she would be really worried. I went back to my room, but I was still uneasy, so I called Qingyan directly. He was having dinner with Gu Baibai at the time, and as soon as he answered, he asked me what was wrong. I asked, do you know who the top science student in the province is this year? He was stunned for a moment and said, who? I suppressed my emotions and told him that it was Ji Ping'an. After listening, he put down his knife, took a sip of red wine, and asked me what I wanted to say. I said quietly, do you remember when Ji Boda said Ping'an's grades were average? We never asked him how he knew, nor did we ever check. He even said that Ping'an was hanging out with hooligans and delinquents, and we believed him. But now Ping'an is the top science student. Don't you think there's something wrong with that? What's even more ridiculous is that tonight Ji Boda told Mom that Ping'an got the top score, but nobody asked how someone with bad grades could suddenly become the top student. Qingyan seemed very impatient. He said he understood all of this, but the past was just me and Jidya arguing at home without getting the real report. It was useless to talk about it now. He told me not to bother him, that he was having dinner with Lawyer Gu, and that he would talk to me when he got back tomorrow night. I asked him if he wasn't coming back tonight. He said no, gave Gu Baibai a wink, and then hung up. I sat alone in my room, picked up the family photo with a torn corner, and stared at it blankly, my heart pounding. 4 days later, the people from the testing center handed me the report. This was the last one. I already knew the results of the first two, but I still clung to a sliver of impossible hope. But when I saw the conclusion, everything went black, and even saying thank you felt utterly powerless. I sat in the car, unable to start it, tears streaming down my face. Why did this happen? What should I do? The second young lady of the Wu family, a renowned screenwriter, was huddled in the sports car, sobbing quietly. These 3 paternity test reports clearly stated, "We are related by blood." I can't imagine what will happen when these documents are presented to my mother, and I can't even imagine what will happen next. I stared at her blankly, my heart churning with emotion. What a mess it would be if the media found out about this. Jinglei's expression was complicated. I could tell. She had actually regretted it long ago, regretting her anger and insistence a week ago, especially the indignation she felt in front of her older sister that day. Looking back now, it all seemed like a joke. She said that after trying to see things from her older sister's perspective, she realized that things were far more complicated than she had originally thought. She remained silent for a long time. Although she always considered herself a calm person, she suddenly felt a trace of hatred towards me again. She suddenly blurted out, "Why are you telling me all this? Do you only feel happy when Jijia falls apart? Did you already foresee this outcome when you proposed severing ties?" At that moment, tears welled up in her eyes, and she cried for a long time in the car. After calming down, she touched up her makeup. She stared at my number on her phone, but couldn't bring herself to press it. After much hesitation, she called Ji Qingyan first. "Sister, are you free now?" After hanging up the phone, Ji Qingyan slowly put away his pen and tidied up the huge desk. Half an hour later, I parked my car, walked through the doors of the Kempinski Hotel, and went straight to room 608. Pushing open the door, I saw Jinglei had already placed the paternity test report on the bed. Her eyes were a little red and swollen, but she seemed relatively calm. There was an ashtray and an open bottle of red wine on the coffee table, which she and Ji Qingyan were both drinking from, neither of them speaking first. When I knocked, Jinglei opened the door. I couldn't help but ask, "Big sister, second sister, what's the matter that has to be said at the hotel? Can we talk about it at home?" I casually tossed my bag onto the sofa and plopped down next to Ji Qingyan. Jinglei didn't answer and turned to go into the bedroom. Ji Qingyan pushed a wine glass towards me. "Wait a minute. Let's talk after we see what it is." A moment later, Jinglei came out and handed me 3 documents. I looked at her curiously, then at Ji Qingyan, who had no expression on his face. "What documents are these?" When I looked down, I was stunned. It was a paternity test report. "Whose is this?" I looked up, my voice trembling slightly. The 3 reports came from 3 different hospitals, but the conclusions were exactly the same. There was a blood relationship between the 2 samples. Although I don't know whose report this is, I do know very well that you had a paternity test done before you returned to the G family. And because of that result, he has always felt that your existence is a stain on the G family. No matter what you do, he has never given you a kind look. Ji Qingyan picked up his wine glass, downed it in one gulp, and put it down before speaking. "It belongs to Dad and Ji Boda. Ji Boda wasn't adopted. He's our half-brother." My eyes widened. The report in my hand froze in midair. And after a long pause, I managed to squeeze out, "How is this possible, sister? Are you mistaken? How could Boda be related to Dad by blood? This is impossible." I slammed the file back onto the sofa. Boda was adopted by Mom and Dad from the orphanage. Jinglei's expression was frighteningly calm. "I got the samples from Dad's bedroom and Boda's room. To ensure accuracy, I divided them into 3 parts and sent them to 3 different hospitals for testing. That's the truth." She exhaled a puff of smoke, took a sip of her drink, walked to the window, and looked outside. "I regret it so much." Ji Qingyan sighed. "Now we have to figure out how to get Mom to accept this reality." A chill ran through me. This matter was far more complicated than I had imagined. I sat there without saying a word, my heart filled with a jumble of emotions, like a spilled spice bottle. Normally, I, the 3rd child, have the most volatile temper, but today I was unusually calm. It's not that I'm carefree, but rather that I simply don't believe the so-called appraisal report they presented to me. I looked up at them with a cold smile. "This thing does have legal effect, that's true, but how can you prove that it belongs to Bob Boda? How much did Ji Pingyan give you to pull this stunt together? Where did he get the money? Even if it really belongs to Ba and Boda, what does that prove?" Ji Qingyan shook her head, looking like she was saying, "Let's lay it all out." She said it didn't matter what she said. He was just her beloved younger brother, Boda, who really was her own brother. As for her mother, it was just a matter of her spoiling her father. In reality, it was a 2+1 situation. Ji Jinglei sighed beside her and said that she knew that I was closest to Boda, but that not only meant that Boda was Dad's illegitimate son, but also that Dad had been lying to Mom and the four of us sisters all along. Not to mention other possibilities, but she had not yet obtained conclusive evidence. She exchanged a glance with Qin Yin, and the eldest sister nodded. She then continued, saying that Boda and Ping'an were born within a month of each other. How Ping'an was lost would be explained later, but at least it showed that after Mom became pregnant with Ping'an, Dad found another woman outside. When Ping'an was lost, Dad brought Boda home, saying he had been adopted from an orphanage. These documents were actually easy to forge, but the problem was that Mom was kept in the dark. She paused, her voice low. Have you thought about what if Boda himself knew about our true parentage? Eventually, all four of us sisters will get married, and then Mom will be all alone at home. My expression changed repeatedly as I listened. I picked up my glass, down a glass of red wine in one gulp, and put the glass down, saying, there's no need to say anything more. I can roughly imagine what the consequences will be, but I don't believe this report. Qin Yin suddenly laughed. Does not believing mean it doesn't exist? Do you want me to give you a chance to collect this sample yourself and send it to the hospital for testing? I didn't say a word, but I was already seething with anger, and my face showed a defiant expression. Qin Yin wasn't going to back down yet, saying that she called me here because Miao Xuan was still in school, and he, Jinglei, and I share the same mother. Otherwise, given my personality, he wouldn't have invited me at all. As for the parent-child relationship between Dad and Boda, the only person who can't get involved is our mother. I couldn't help but get angry. Are you trying to make me acknowledge that ill-mannered Ji Ping'an? Dream on. No matter what, Boda has lived with me for 18 years. 18 years. How many 18-year periods does a person have in their lifetime? I'm not involved in this matter. Whether you acknowledge Boda or not, I consider him my brother. Qin Yin's chest heaved with anger, seemingly holding back from slapping me. Jinglei shook her head, saying I was overthinking it. She called me here to make me understand that if Boda himself knew about his relationship with Dad, then he was a rather insidious and terrifying person. Whether I acknowledge it or not, he is our half-brother. That's a fact, and we can't deny it. But I need to think this through. If he inherits all of the Ji family's assets, and his biological mother is still alive, what will become of her? I need to figure this out now. After all, I studied law, so I should understand this better than anyone else. I saw that Ji Jie completely ignored him and instead stared at Ji Qin Yin, asking, what exactly do you want to do? Are you going to tell Mom directly, or do you want to handle this? Ji Qin Yin pointed at Ji Jinglei and said that Ping'an said something on the night he left home that your second sister noticed. Later, he even went with me to see Ji Ping'an, and it was Ping'an who said it himself. Ji Boda is his father's illegitimate son, and he even knows clearly that Boda's biological mother, Qin Balian, lives in Century Garden in Haidong District. I checked, and there is indeed a woman named Qin Balian in Century Garden. My father has been there 4 times recently, and even stayed overnight once. I don't know what your second sister found out, but this is all I found. I didn't want to do a paternity test. The recording alone would be enough to prove it. But since it wasn't conclusive, your second sister did the test. That's what happened, so don't glare at me or interrupt. Ji Qin Yin even stopped Ji Jie, who wanted to stand up and speak, and said that he called her here to discuss how to talk to her mother, not to argue. He told her to speak if she had any ideas, and to leave if she didn't want to participate. He said that her loud voice gave him a headache. Ji Jie held back for a long time. If her eldest sister hadn't stopped her, she would have almost shouted it out. She sneered. You believe everything Ji Ping'an says? Who does he think he is? How would he know all this? Where are his sources and motives? I don't care whether these things are true or false. Anyway, his motives are despicable. He's just jealous because the whole family treats Boda well, so he wants to take everything from Boda and destroy him. Otherwise, why would he investigate these things? You can believe in such a malicious person if you want. It has nothing to do with me. I have never believed him since the first time he entered the Ji family. Ji Jinglei shook her head and said, don't be so extreme. Ping'an never said he wanted to sever ties. He brought it up himself. You forgot that this is a classic example of using retreat as a strategy to advance. Ji Jie looked disdainful and said, that's why I said he was malicious. He pretended to leave the Ji family resolutely first, and then threw out this thing.